deep, dark secret at the time, but for the dialogue between Moses and the burning bush, which is presumed to be the voice of God after going through any number of trial voices on it.
A man once known for stalking Jamie Lee Curtis through Haddonfield in a rubber mask stepped behind the camera and brought that same chaos with him. Major Payne looks like a simple military comedy on the surface, but behind the scenes it was built on real military training, real cadets, and moments that blurred the line between acting and reality. Even some of the reactions you see on screen weren't fully planned. So why was such a controlled comedy hiding such an uncontrolled production? Here are 28 secrets about Major Payne that were never shown in the trailer. Number 28. The director used to be a horror icon. Nick Castle, the man who directed Major Payne, spent his early career inside a William Shatner mask, playing Michael Myers in the original 1978 Halloween. He took the role almost by accident, as a favor to his college friend John Carpenter, and got paid $25 a day for it. By the time he showed up on a Virginia prep school campus to direct Damon Wayans in Fatigues, Nick had already built one of the strangest resumes in Hollywood, sliding from slasher icon to family filmmaker without anyone connecting the dots. That contradiction, the most famous silent killer in horror history going on to direct The Last Starfighter, Dennis the Menace, and a PG-13 military comedy, says everything about how unpredictable this entire production turned out to be. Nick even came close to directing Steven Spielberg's Hook before creative differences pushed him off the project. A what-if that, in hindsight, makes his pivot toward Major Payne feel like just one more strange turn in an already strange career. And the strangeness didn't stop with the man calling action. Number 27. The whole movie was already a remake. Major Payne is a loose remake of a 1955 film called The Private War of Major Benson, which starred Charlton Heston as a hardened officer assigned to whip a group of military school cadets into shape. 40 years before Damon Wayans ever put on a Marine uniform, Charlton was doing a version of the exact same job, minus the bald heads and the grenade jokes, with the original film also leaning on Sal Mineo and a young Tim Hovey in roles that essentially function as the 1950s equivalent of Payne's misfit cadets. But if Major Payne began as a remake, who exactly laid the foundation for the story 40 years earlier? Number 26. The original was written by the creators of Leave It to Beaver. The story for The Private War of Major Benson came from Joe Connolly and Bob Mosher, the same writing team responsible for creating the all-American sitcom Leave It to Beaver. It's a strange lineage for a film that eventually mutated into a Damon Wayans comedy built on grenade pranks and bald-headed teenagers, but Hollywood remakes have a habit of wandering a long way from where they started. The original even used a real Catholic military school in Anaheim, California, called St. Catherine's Military School, for its scenery and its student extras. Decades before, Major Payne would borrow the exact same trick from a different academy on the opposite coast. What started as a wholesome 1950s service comedy needed considerably more hands to drag it into the 1990s, and the number of people who ended up working on that transformation was almost comical on its own. Number 25. It took 7 credited writers to build the script. According to Metacritic's review of the film, no fewer than 7 writers were involved in shaping the story and screenplay for Major Payne, a number the outlet described as a textbook case of more producing less. Joe Connolly, Bob Mosher, William Roberts, and Richard Allen Simmons all carried over credit from the 1955 original, while Dean Lorey, Gary Rosen, and Damon Wayans himself reworked it into the version that actually reached theaters in 1995. That kind of writer's room churn is common on studio comedies that get reworked over years of development. But it also explains some of the tonal whiplash critics later pointed to, a film that swings between broad slapstick, genuine sentiment, and the rhythms of a stand-up routine, often within the same scene. Wayans wasn't just contributing dialogue from the sidelines either. He had a much bigger stake in this one than people realized at the time. Number 24. Damon Wayans was co-writer and executive producer, not just the star. Beyond starring as Major Payne, Damon served as one of the credited screenwriters and as an executive producer on the film.
Thrilled that Damon Wayans back on Good Day New York. The last time we had a good time, he's going to be at the...
Alongside producers Eric L. Gold and Michael Rachmil. The production company behind it was even named Wife and Kids Productions, Damon Wayans' own banner, a name that would later resurface years afterward when he created the sitcom My Wife and Kids, suggesting the title wasn't just a throwaway label, but a phrase Wayans genuinely kept coming back to throughout his career. This was not a paycheck role he wandered into. It was a project he had actively shaped from the writer's room all the way through to the camera. At a moment in his career when he was actively trying to prove he could carry a film as more than just the loud comic persona audiences knew from In Living Color. Major Payne arrived after his previous starring vehicle, Blankman, had underperformed, making this a genuine swing for credibility as much as box office success. To make the character believable, though, writing credits weren't going to be enough. Wayans needed to actually learn how a real Marine Corps drill instructor operates. Number 23. Damon trained for weeks with real drill instructors. To prepare for the role, Damon Wayans went through several weeks of DI qualification training, studying the actual requirements and techniques of a Marine Corps drill instructor. That training revealed something Wayans clearly found useful as a comedian, something most civilians never think about when they picture a drill instructor screaming at recruits. Number 22. Real drill instructors are basically trained improv comedians. A common observation among former drill instructors across every branch of the military is that the job requires the same skill set as stand-up comedy. Damon, who had already spent years sharpening exactly that kind of improvisational instinct on In Living Color, walked into this role with a head start most actors playing a D I never get. Damon leaned on more than just instinct too. The production brought in real military advisors, including a first sergeant and a lieutenant, to keep the drilling sequences from feeling like pure fantasy. That same instinct for finding comedy inside a real-life dynamic carried over into the cast itself, including one relationship the audience had no idea was actually a family connection. Number 21. Payne's nephew was Wayans' real nephew. Damien Dante Wayans, who plays Cadet Williams in the film, is Damon Wayans' actual nephew in real life. When Major Payne screams in his face that he is not your damned brother, it lands as a throwaway insult to anyone watching.
I am not your damn brother!
To anyone who knew the family, it was something closer to an inside joke hiding in plain sight, delivered by an uncle to his own nephew on a film set in Virginia. Damien would go on to spend years working steadily in and around the family business, eventually directing the parody film Dance Flick and several episodes of My Wife and Kids, building a career that, while never as visible as his uncle's, kept him working inside the same orbit for decades afterward. Damien wasn't the only person on set who would go on to build a real career off this experience, even if his path looked nothing like his uncle's. Number 20. From a bald cadet to a Disney star. Orlando Brown, who played the youngest cadet, Tiger, was just a kid when he filmed Major Payne, years before becoming a household name as Eddie Thomas on Disney Channel's That's So Raven. Watching the film now, knowing where his career eventually led, adds an odd layer to a movie that already feels like a strange time capsule of mid-90s casting choices. Orlando's journey from a young cadet shaving his head for a Damon Wayans comedy to a Disney leading man is the kind of direction nobody could have predicted on set in 1994, a path that took him from a small supporting role in a military spoof to becoming one of the most recognizable faces on children's television by the early 2000s. However, his casting came with a very specific condition attached, one that applied to every kid actor cast in Payne's JROTC unit, and it wasn't negotiable for anyone. Number 19. Every kid actor had to sign a bald head agreement. Damon Wayans revealed in an interview that the child actors playing Payne's cadets could only join the production if they signed an agreement with director Nick Castle, stating they would let their heads be shaved completely bald since it was a key running joke in the film. This wasn't a suggestion floated during rehearsals. It was written into the deal before anyone got cast, a condition baked into the production from the start. For a group of young actors, many of them appearing in their first or only film credit, agreeing to shave their heads completely bald on camera, with no guarantee of how they'd look once the buzzer stopped, took a level of commitment that most adult actors never get asked for. Not every kid who wanted the role was actually willing to go through with it once the moment actually arrived. Number 18. One almost cast kid walked away over the head-shaving rule. According to Damon Wayans, one child actor whose name he never publicly revealed had nearly signed on for the film, then started complaining once it came time to actually shave his head. When Castle told him the rule was required and completely non-negotiable, the kid dropped out entirely and was quietly replaced. Somewhere out there is a kid who came one haircut away from being in a movie that's still airing on cable 30 years later. A near miss that, for the unnamed actor in question, probably stings a lot more in hindsight than it did the day he walked off the project. While the cadets were losing their hair, the film's female lead walked away from one of television's most recognizable roles to take this one instead. Number 17. Karen Parsons was still playing Hilary Banks when she took this role. Karen Parsons was cast as school counselor Dr. Emily Walburn while she was still appearing as the spoiled, fashion-obsessed Hilary Banks on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Well, that's just my point. You see, now you're dealing with children, and children have special needs.
A role she played from 1990 to 1996. Stepping into a grounded, sympathetic counselor role in a military comedy was about as far from Hilary's glamorous self-absorption as a casting choice could get, and Parsons made the switch look effortless. Karen Parsons had also already built a track record opposite comedic leading men before this, having played the female lead alongside the rap duo Kid and Play in the 1992 teen comedy class act. By the time Major Payne came along, she was a known quantity for grounding broad comedy with genuine warmth, which is exactly the role Emily Walburn needed to play against Payne's chaos. Karen wasn't the only cast member bringing a surprising resume to a film most people remember purely as slapstick. The actor playing the school's headmaster had something on his shelf that nobody expected to find attached to a Damon Wayans comedy. Number 16. The headmaster was an Oscar nominee. William Hickey, who played the eccentric, frail headmaster Dr. Phillips, had earned an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor for his role in 1985's Prizzi's Honor. By the time he showed up in Major Payne, William was bringing genuine prestige film credibility to a movie built around grenade pranks and bald cadets, a detail almost nobody watching it for the jokes would have guessed. His instantly recognizable raspy voice and frail physical presence made him a memorable character actor for decades.
We have an ROTC program?
The Green Boys, sir.
All right, between us.
And casting him as the school's eccentric headmaster gave the film a strange, almost theatrical energy in every scene he appeared in, a sharp contrast to the broader comedic style surrounding him. Hickey wasn't the only supporting actor with a far more serious filmography hiding behind the comedy. The man playing Payne's military rival had spent years building a reputation as one of the most reliable villains in action cinema. Number 15. The villain actor had already terrified audiences for years. Michael Ironside, who played the cold, calculating Lieutenant Colonel Stone, had already built a career playing memorable antagonists in films like Scanners and Top Gun before signing on here. Audiences who grew up associating his face with genuine menace got a slightly different flavor of intimidating in Major Payne, where his rigid military rival mostly exists to be outshined by Payne's chaos, a deliberate contrast that let the film use Ironside's established screen presence as a setup for jokes rather than genuine dread, flipping his usual on-screen function almost entirely. Even the general giving Payne his orders had once stood inside one of the most acclaimed war films ever made, decades before any of them set foot on this set. Number 14. General Decker had already survived Apocalypse Now. Albert Hall, who played Brigadier General Decker, had appeared in Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now more than 15 years earlier. Going from a deadly serious Vietnam War epic to handing Damon Wayans his JROTC assignment in a PG-13 comedy is the kind of career range that rarely gets acknowledged. Buried beneath a film most people remember only for its punchlines, Albert Hall's appearance in this film is barely a footnote in most write-ups of his career, but it's a small, telling reminder of how many serious dramatic actors quietly cycled through broad studio comedies during this era, picking up a paycheck and a few laughs between far heavier projects. Some of the most surprising casting on this film, though, didn't come from the world of acting at all, proving that for at least one supporting role, The production cared more about genuine physical presence than any formal acting resume. Number 13. The intimidating biker was a real professional wrestler. The cadets hire a biker to intimidate Payne into quitting midway through the film, and that biker was played by Bam Bam Bigelow, a genuine professional wrestler known for his work in promotions such as WCW and the WWF. For a movie built entirely around exaggerated physical intimidation, casting an actual professional wrestler rather than a trained actor to play the muscle was a small but very deliberate choice. While the casting choices were carefully built around realism in some corners, the film's actual filming location had nothing to do with the military at all. Number 12. The military school was a civilian prep school. The vast majority of Major Payne was filmed at the Miller School of Albemarle, a co-educational private preparatory school sitting on a 1,600-acre campus in Charlottesville, Virginia. It had never been a military institution at all, but its rolling hills and historic brick buildings gave the production exactly the visual texture it needed to sell Madison Preparatory School as a believable setting. Located in Albemarle County near Charlottesville, the campus eventually hosted other Hollywood productions in the years that followed, including Evan Almighty and Toy Soldiers, cementing it as one of Central Virginia's go-to filming sites long after Major Payne wrapped. For a different layer of authenticity, the production eventually turned to an institution that actually was a military school, just a few miles away. Number 11. Real military cadets filled the background of the film. Extras in uniform throughout the film were often actual cadets from Fork Union Military Academy, a real institution located near Charlottesville that has been training students since 1898. The production borrowed both the school's military bearing and its students, blending real cadets into a fictional unit that, on screen, could never have actually existed under real JROTC regulations, since the Code of Federal Regulations requires JROTC participants to be physically fit and at least in the 7th grade, a rule the film's own roster of cadets, including its youngest and its blind recruit, would never have actually cleared. The production's gratitude toward that real academy ended up creating one of the more amusing mistakes buried in the film's own closing credits. Number 10. The credits thanked a school that doesn't exist. In the closing credits, the producers thank Fort Union Military Academy, a name that does not actually exist anywhere. The real institution's correct name is Fork Union Military Academy. After borrowing the school's grounds, its cadets, and its military atmosphere for weeks of filming, the production still managed to misspell its name in the one place meant to officially thank it. That wasn't the only detail military-minded viewers picked apart once the film hit theaters and home video. Number 9. The opening scene put a California base in Virginia. Early in the film, a sign reading Camp Pendleton appears in a scene set in Virginia, despite the real Camp Pendleton being a Marine Corps base located in California. For a production that brought in real military advisors and put its star through weeks of drill instructor training, a geography error stuck out immediately to anyone who actually knew their bases. It's a small mistake in the grand scheme of a comedy built around exaggerated jokes, but it's exactly the kind of detail that sticks with anyone who actually served, the sort of inconsistency that turns a throwaway opening shot into a permanent piece of movie trivia decades after release. Geography wasn't the only branch of military accuracy the film fumbled. The uniforms themselves told a story that didn't quite add up either. Number 8. Payne's branch and his cadets' branch don't match. Major Payne is explicitly a Marine Corps officer, but the cadets under his command wear Army JROTC unit patches and rank insignia on their uniforms throughout the film. In reality, a Marine officer would never be assigned to lead an Army JROTC unit, since each branch staffs and runs its own programs separately, and Army units are staffed exclusively by Army personnel. It's a detail that flew completely past general audiences, but never escaped anyone who actually served, and it's become one of the most frequently cited goofs whenever military veterans discuss the film online. The military inaccuracies even extended to one of the film's most memorable visual gags, the kind of detail you'd only notice if you'd actually handled military hardware yourself. Number 7. The live grenade is painted the wrong color. When Major Payne pulls the pin from what's presented as a live grenade using his teeth, eagle-eyed viewers pointed out that the grenade is clearly painted blue, the standard color used for practice and dummy grenades rather than live explosives. Pulling a pin with your teeth is already physically implausible given a real grenade's double safety mechanism, but the prop department apparently didn't even bother disguising which version they'd actually handed Damon Wayans for the scene. For a film this loose in its military realism, the title itself carried more intent than people probably gave it credit for. Number 6. The title is a pun hiding in plain sight. Major Payne's name is, quite deliberately, a pun on the word Payne, describing a man whose entire personality is built around inflicting discomfort on everyone around him, from his Marine superiors to a group of teenage cadets who clearly never asked for any of it. It's the kind of joke so obvious it barely registers, right up until you say the title out loud and realize what you've actually been calling this movie the whole time. It's the kind of joke that works precisely because it never explains itself. Nobody in the film stops to point out that Payne sounds exactly like pain. The script just lets the audience arrive at it on their own, which is part of why it still gets a laugh from people who notice it for the first time, decades after its release. None of these inside jokes or production quirks mattered much to critics when the film actually hit theaters, but audiences reacted noticeably differently. Number 5. The movie opened at number 2 at the box office. When Major Payne premiered on March 24, 1995, it opened at number 2 at the domestic box office, a strong showing for a modestly budgeted comedy built around a single star's persona. It didn't match the numbers of Castle's previous hit, Dennis the Menace, which had grossed an enormous $117 million worldwide against a $35 million budget just 2 years earlier. That opening weekend success set the tone for the film's performance throughout its run, despite a budget that had been kept relatively tight from the start. Number 4. It made triple its budget back worldwide. Major Payne was produced on a budget of roughly $10 million and went on to gross about $30 million worldwide. That's a 3-to-1 return on investment, the kind of number that makes a modest comedy quietly profitable even without ever topping the box office charts outright. Box office success and critical respect, though, turned out to be two completely separate conversations when it came to this particular film. Number 3. Critics tore it apart. Major Payne holds a 29% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes based on 14 reviews and a 34 out of 100 score on Metacritic, landing it firmly in generally unfavorable territory among critics. One contemporary review called it deeply crude and defiantly non-PC, only marginally more tolerable than Wayans' previous film, Blankman. Reviewers weren't shy about pointing out that the jokes leaned heavily on shock value and familiar formula rather than anything genuinely fresh, and more than one critic noted that the film's predictable structure had been visible from the opening scene, with the eventual softening of Payne's character never in any real doubt. Even some of the more positive reviews came with caveats baked right in, praising Wayans' performance specifically, while dismissing the surrounding film as a fairly thin vehicle built just to give him room to riff. None of that critical drubbing mattered much to the audience the film was actually built for, though, and that disconnect only grew wider as the years went on. Number 2. The score was composed by a Hollywood veteran you've heard without knowing it. The film's original score was composed by Craig Safan, a prolific film and television composer whose work runs through decades of American pop culture, even if his name rarely gets recognized outside the industry. His score for Major Payne does exactly what a 90s military comedy needs it to do: heighten the absurdity of Payne's antics without ever undercutting the genuine sweetness buried underneath all the chaos, swinging from bombastic, almost militaristic cues during the drilling scenes to softer, more sentimental passages once Payne starts actually bonding with his cadets. That combination is ultimately what allowed the film to outlive every harsh review thrown at it. Number 1. Decades of cable reruns turned it into a cult classic critics never saw coming. Despite the poor reviews at release, Major Payne became a fixture of basic cable programming throughout the late 1990s and 2000s. The kind of film an entire generation can quote from memory, even though they never sought it out in theaters. It's been described by entertainment writers as probably the best-known entry in director Nick Castle's filmography, more recognizable today to younger audiences than Dennis the Menace ever was, and far more quoted among fans than anything its 29% Rotten Tomatoes score would ever suggest. Which of these secrets surprised you the most? Did you already know the director once played one of horror's most iconic killers, or that two of these cadets were already family before the cameras rolled? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.